Hello, welcome to the NUFC360 podcast with me, Jack, and I'm joined this week by Bo and Ryan. And, well, unfortunately, Newcastle's brilliant winning run came to a pretty horrible end at the hands of Aston Villa at the weekend. Newcastle went to Villa Park, having beaten Crystal Palace 5-0 and Manchester United 4-1, but the Jason Tyndall magic wore off and we were beaten 4-1 by Aston Villa, who've since lost to Manchester City, in fairness, 2-1, which absolutely has blown the race for Champions League football wide open. So we're going to be looking at that. We're going to actually look at the race for the Champions League as well. And, of course, Eddie Howe is back in the dugout on Saturday when Newcastle take on Ipswich Town and have a chance to immediately, well, jump above the teams who we've lost out to. If Newcastle win, we'll move on to 62 points, which will be the same amount of games also that Villa and Man City have played. Nottingham Forest will be the only team who would have a game in hand. So let's get into it. And I suppose let's start with what happened on Saturday. So Ryan, where did it all go wrong?
I think we were just one of those games where we were just second best from start to finish, really. I think Villa, it was always going to be a tough game. I kind of predicted on here last week, optimistically, we might get a point given our form and given what they put into Tuesday night against PSG. But like us, they're a tough team to play when they're playing at home and the crowd's behind them and the crowd was behind them. And fair play to them. I think they were just a better team from start to finish. They seemed to have more energy. We looked tired. We looked leggy, I think. And I think the biggest difference, I think what the game highlighted was the difference in squad depth between Aston Villa and Newcastle. I think obviously the first 11s themselves are pretty even, and I think we've seen it. Newcastle beat Villa on their day, and Villa have beaten Newcastle on the day. But if you look at what Villa had in terms of some of the changes they made going into the game, they were able to make 3-4 changes. I think Maatsen coming in, Watkins coming in, Asensio coming in, and I think there was another midfielder that came in as well. They're 4 pretty big changes to make and 4 good players that are coming in at the same time. Whereas if you look at our side, who did we bring off the bench? Kraft, Target, Callum Wilson. It's just a massive gulf in class, and they're bringing on players that can impact the game. Rashford, Nana, came on, had an immediate impact. It was a tough game. I don't think it's worth, like you say, Jack. I think given Villa's result the other night, I don't think it's worth getting carried away about. We've been on a great run, and I think the general consensus within the fan base is that, it was just one of those nights. We've been on a brilliant run. We've put ourselves in a fantastic position. You could argue, to even be where we are and to have been in third place going into that game on Saturday night was a great achievement in itself. So I'm just, you've just got to hope now. We've got 5 cup finals left that we can turn around and give a response ultimately. I think that's going to be the most important thing.
No, Ryan, you made some great points there. Naturally, while you were saying, I just wanted to go and actually try and get the substitutes up because I wanted to go and have a look before I talked to Bo about it. And, okay, so let's go through them. So Aston Villa brought on Amadou Onana, Jacob Ramsey, Ross Barkley, Daniel Marlin, and Marcus Rashford. So we're talking about 4 international footballers there. Marcus Rashford scored 30 goals for Manchester United 2 seasons ago. Daniel Marlin was playing for Dortmund against Newcastle in the Champions League last season. Amadou Onana plays for Belgium every single game for them. And Jacob Ramsey is extremely highly rated English player. He's not been capped yet, but he is extremely highly rated.
He had a big impact as well.
Yeah, he was. I think I rate Jacob Ramsey so highly. I think he's a brilliant footballer.
Yeah, we were linked with him, weren't we?
We have been linked with him. He's almost the kind of perfect Eddie Howe player in many ways, to be fair. And then if we look at Newcastle, Matt Target, Joe Willock, who I'm a big fan of Joe Willock, but look, he's not had his best season, so we can't argue with that. Callum Wilson not scored a Premier League goal this season. Emma Kraft and Anthony Gordon. So if you're looking at that, realistically, Gordon's probably the only one who you're going to say is going to make a real impact on the game, especially, as I said, given Willock's form. So, I mean, Bo, do you think it was just a case of the squad depth just ultimately made the difference?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. And even with Gordon, we know he hasn't been proper 100% fit in the last couple of weeks coming back from injury. I think we all knew as soon as those substitutions were made they had essentially said, okay, let's just do some damage control and hope this doesn't turn into a 5-6 run in. So it's unfortunate, and we've seen Villa the last couple of, last transfer window before that have essentially continued to gamble with PSR. And it showed within their buying, but it's worked for them, and our club is not run that way just yet, and hopefully this summer we'll be able to bring in some more depth and maybe have some more game changers on the bench. That way, if we do have a rotation, it's one of those things where it's not kind of a resignation for the game. So, I look at who we brought on. The only person, like you said, who probably would have made an impact if fit would be Anthony Gordon, and Joe Willock probably could have as well to some extent. But everybody else you look at, it's kind of like, okay, we're resigned to the fact that we're gonna hopefully not have any more injuries and just kind of head back up to the northeast.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. No, carry on, Ryan. Go for
I was going to say, Jack, I don't think it's necessarily on the bench not being good enough, because I think obviously the 11 on the pitches is the one that ultimately has to make the difference.
Yeah,
having those options off the bench like Villa have is obviously great, but it's the fact that Villa are able to switch up their squad and, like you say, make a couple of changes and freshen things up in key areas that's where Newcastle seem to struggle. I think we've definitely lost the midfield battle, and that's normally an area where we're so dominant, and you can just tell we kind of look a little bit leggy. I think, Bruno, for example, I think his head was gone. I think he was just, you could tell he wasn't in the game.
I thought he was going to get sent off to be there. I thought he was going to get sent off.
And Tonali and Joe Linton probably weren't quite as impactful as they normally are in the game. So I think, like Bo says, I think, I think we're going one step ahead, maybe looking at the summer. I think there's obviously big work to do before the end of the season, but we need to, bulk out the squad a little bit, even just having those options off the bench like Villa have to be able to impact or even rotate the squad ultimately, because we're going to be playing, regardless of where we finish, we're guaranteed European football. So we're going to be playing 2-3 times a week, at least 8 times, with the Conference League, and then you've got the cups and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we definitely need a bit more depth in the squad.
And why are we guaranteed European football? Because we'll won a trophy, and I'll never get bored of saying that ever. So looking at I think, obviously Unai Emery's got a lot of praise, and rightfully so, 100%. He's done an amazing job at Aston Villa. But when I look at the squads, the Newcastle and the Aston Villa squad, I just think it almost shows just how well Eddie Howe has done to get Newcastle even remotely, even be competing, and to have beaten Aston Villa 5 out of the last 7 games, I think it is. And in a lot of the games, it's not even been remotely close either against this Aston Villa team. They're going to have a bit of problems in the summer, according to many reports, due to their wage turnover. So they potentially are going to face some form of fine from UEFA or whatever. So that's interesting. Newcastle are nowhere near that. So you feel like there's a potential to change things around there in the summer. I think when you saw the starting 11, I think, looking back on the result now, I think Jason Tyndall was basically in a no-win situation. Because if he changed it, everyone would be like, why changing it? Like, just smash Crystal Palace, just smash Man United, why are you changing it? But also equally, was it asking a bit too much to get that 11 to go again? I'll open the floor to anyone who wants to go there.
I think, like you say, Jack, it's... And I think given the fact, we keep going backward, but given the fact we've got such a big drop-off, it's hard to actually rotate the team, isn't it? Because you take Isak out and bring Wilson in, for example. Isak's maybe not 100% fit. But the drop-off, you've seen Wilson, and like you say, he hasn't scored a goal. Looks like he's running with jeans on. He's just it's literally painful to watch at the minute. I mean, he came on against Palace. I think he touched the ball 3 times. I think that's all. And we're 5-0 up. He just couldn't get in the game. So... And again, in the midfield, you've got Tonali in there who's playing as well as anyone in the Premier League right now. Can it be affording to take him out? If you take Bruno or Joe Linton out, who are you bringing in? You're bringing Willock, Longstaff, Miley, tidy footballer or whatever, but it's a big game to throw him into, especially when you want to try and win that battle in midfield. So, and then again, you just don't really have the options at full-back. Trippier and Tino have been flying. We're not going to bring Matt Target into that game. Ex-Villa boy as well, probably be right up against him. So, like you say, it's a lose-lose. I don't really think there's much rotation we can do, and I don't think we will rotate the side. The only player maybe is Anthony Gordon, but again, both your wingers are absolutely flying, and you don't want to drop people that are ultimately playing well. The old saying is never change a winning team, right? So, and And I know that's not the way it works these days, but when you've got very little options and your team is playing so well, I guess you just got to stick with what you got.
No, I think it just shows how close Newcastle are probably to building such a really good team. This summer's probably arguably the most important since the takeover in many ways if Newcastle want to get to that next level. But of course, there's plenty of work to do there, and it's getting into the Champions League. So let's have a look at the race of the Champions League, because the title race is over. Liverpool need a point from their last games. So unless they lose every single game and Arsenal overhaul a 10 goal difference, then Liverpool are going to be the champions. So we can safely assume Liverpool are champions. Leicester and Southampton are being relegated, arguably two of the worst teams we've ever seen. And Ipswich are going to go if they lose on Saturday, actually, that they're relegated as well. So the race for Champions League as it stands: Manchester City, 61 points. Nottingham Forest, 60 points. Newcastle, 59 points. Chelsea, 57 points. Aston Villa, 57 points. In that, Manchester City have played 34 games, and so have Aston Villa. Every other team has played 33 games. I mean, it's going down to the end of the season, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that what we love, right? We love a competitive Premier League. Just wish we were a little bit farther ahead.
I don't. I'd rather have it wrapped up, to be honest with you. I mean, it's good for the new, I guess.
Yeah, good for the viewer. But no, I mean, if you look at the run-ins, I think we're smack dab in the middle. In terms of who we're playing, I think City, I think they should be fine. Looking at who they're playing, they probably have the easiest run-in compared to everybody. And then if you look at Chelsea and Forest, they probably have a bit of a tougher one. But I don't think our run-in is as hard as some people say, but I also don't think it's the easiest one either. I think, Ryan, I'll be interested to see what you think, but I think if we can get 3 wins, we'll probably solidify our position in Champions League football.
Win the home games.
Yes, exactly. It's 3 home games and 2 away games, correct?
Yeah. The away games are Brighton and Arsenal, which are interesting because Newcastle have never won at Brighton in the Premier League, which is insane. I think the last time Newcastle won there was that Mo Diarmi goal, and then Perez scored right at the end. And then Arsenal, again, Newcastle not a happy hunting ground at all. Won there once in the Premier League when Andy Carroll scored that header, but have won there already this season. And by that point, Arsenal's season will be essentially over, or they'll be focused on the Champions League if they get through PSG. So, yeah, what do you think about Ryan? Because as I say, like it is so close. It's really interesting.
It is tough. Yeah, so I think there's potential it's going to go down the last day, isn't it? I think I was looking at the fixtures, and I think Nottingham Forest actually play Chelsea last game of the season. So there's a lot riding on that game, I would imagine. I look at the run-ins, and I mean Chelsea have probably got the hardest run-in. Forest have got to play. I think they've got to play Tottenham and Man United. But I mean there's probably 2 teams. If there's 2 teams you'd want to play in the Premier League right now, apart from Southampton and Leicester, I think Nottingham Forest and Man United.
So I've got Forest run up. I've got Forest running here because I think it's Villa play Tottenham and Man United. So Forest have got Brentford, Palace, Leicester, West Ham, and Chelsea. And you know what? I think that's Brentford are going for Europa Conference League, so they've got a Palace. Depending on what happens on Saturday, they could be in an FA Cup final. They might not be. Their season might be entirely over. Leicester are down. West Ham have had one of their worst seasons they've ever had, and Chelsea could be out. You look at Forest, I just think they might win quite a lot of them, to be honest. Initially, I had them ruled out, but then when I saw that, I'm not sure. I don't know.
I think they bounced back. I mean, there was a big result for them on Monday night, and I think they played well. And I think it was a lot of people secretly hoping that Tottenham might somehow miraculously turn up, and it's not an easy thing to go to Tottenham Stadium and win, but
it's for everyone this season.
Pretty comfortable, really, especially in the first season. Yeah, but like I'm saying, I think they've got a decent. Like Bo says, I think City will make it, and I think that's probably why we were happy. I was happy anyway that Man City managed to get that last minute winner, because I think, they've got a pretty good run in, and I think we're fighting ultimately. There's 4 teams fighting for those last 2 spots.
Yeah.
I think if we win on Saturday, it's a massive boost for us. We're practically 5 points, practically 6 ahead of Villa with a goal difference with 4 games left to play. So, like you say, I mean, you just need 2 wins after. You need 3 wins, really. I think 3 wins would be enough. I think it's easier said than done, though, because I think Chelsea will be up for it. it's not an easy team, and they're not a pushover by any stretch of the imagination. And you know what Everton are like? I mean, they don't like us, and they're tough defensively. They're not going to just come over and roll over for us, I don't think. So it's just tough to call, to be honest. I really can't call it right now. I think we've just got to take it game by game. But I think we will need some favours, and I think Villa are obviously dependent on favours from other teams, as are Chelsea and probably as are Forest. So there's going to be twists and turns. I think we're going to lose a couple of games in there probably, or maybe one, and drop a couple of points somewhere. So we just got to hope that, you know, other teams can also help us out.
Yeah, and I initially said we wouldn't lose again this season, and then we went and lost to Aston Villa. So I'm just not going to say anything. I think if you look at, I think it is a really interesting run in. I mean, if you look at our fixtures, I feel like, as I said, Ipswich at home. Look, the way Saturday works is that Chelsea play first, so they play Everton and the half-12 kick-off, okay? If they drop points, they stay behind Newcastle no matter what. If they win, they momentarily move into 4th position. Newcastle win, no matter what, Newcastle will be 3rd at the weekend because Manchester City and Nottingham Forest are playing in the FA Cup. And Nottingham Forest's game in hand is then on Thursday against Brentford. So it's all about Newcastle. Like, you know, you can sit and rely on favours and what have you, but if Newcastle are going to get in the Champions League, they need to be beating Ipswich at home. Like this Ipswich team, apart from Liam Delap, has been really poor. Like, it's been disappointingly poor. They've spent quite a bit of money as well, and they've won once at home all season, which I don't know how, as a promoted team, you can stay up if you only win one home game. Like, they've lost Southampton at home. Do you know what I mean? This is not a good side. Away from home, they've actually picked up a few decent results. They beat Bournemouth and they've beat Tottenham, although I don't know how much that's a decent result, to be fair.
Well, I was going to say, actually, I think you brought a good point. I was going to raise that. I think they've taken 17 and they're 21 points away from home, which is, I mean, that's not a bad return, really. I mean, that would probably be enough for most teams to stay up. Like you say, even if you win 30 games at home, they would probably have enough to stay up. So they've been all right away from home. Probably suits them as well, you know. I mean, obviously they're expected to be a bit more front foot, and the crowd's on your back and want you to do well. So, look, like you say, I think it's as simple as if you want to qualify for the Champions League, you need to be beating Ipswich at home, and if you don't, then you're making your life a lot harder. I think the next two are crucial. Like you say, I think we've got Brighton after. Brighton arguably are having a bit of a tough period. Not really a huge amount to play for, let's be honest. I mean, they can still push for the Conference League, but they have been very up and down this season.
Their season's kind of just collapsed, to be honest. Yeah. You know, Brighton were like 4th at one point, about halfway through the season. They've totally just dropped off a cliff. I mean, they won. I know when they beat Newcastle in the FA Cup, they'd won like 6 in a row, but at that point, but then since then they haven't won. So just a strange season for them, really. I mean, I know it's Fabian Hurtzel's first campaign in England, but I was expecting a little bit more from them, especially with some of the players they have. But I think if we look at the Champions League race as a whole, if Newcastle were to miss out, okay, and not get Champions League football, how would that make you feel about the season? Bear in mind, before the season started, if someone said to you, Newcastle will end this year, end in the trophy drought, and get European football, but then do you also have to factor in the fact that Newcastle have been in the Champions League race for so long, so them missing out would be disappointing? So, do you say? It's a bit of a dilemma, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it.
It's bittersweet. If that was to happen, I think there would be definitely some disappointment around the club. I know the players would be disappointed. You know, obviously the cup was the winning silverware was the main goal that people wanted to bring to the city. I do think that it would be disappointing just because we had that good run in various spots during the season. And for us to not, especially now when it's matters in our own hands and they can grab it by the scruff of the neck. And if they do what they need to do, you know, we can end it on a great note and hopefully transition into a great transfer period. I think they would be extremely disappointed. And I think that, you know, like Ginger Swiss says, we're more than good enough to get into the Champions League. And if we do what we're supposed to, we should be perfectly fine. But if we were not, you know, say we were to falter on that last day, I think it would leave a bad taste in everybody's mouth. I don't think we would lose Alexander Isak or Tonali or anybody of the sort, but I do believe it would leave a bad taste in everybody's mouth.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think there's obviously mixed emotions. I think if you told me at the start of the season we'll win a trophy, I would be absolutely delighted. And you would probably put the league position, and you could accept the league position being lower. I think obviously now you're in the mix for it, and like Bo says, it's in your own hands. You want to get there, and you feel like it would be an important step forward for the club to get back into the Champions League. But I do think, it would be disappointing if they were to miss out, but still being a great season. And if you look at where we were at December and the feeling around the club, for example, if we said that we're going to win a trophy and finish in top 6 or whatever, I think a lot of people would have said, well, yeah, that's an absolute brilliant second half to the season. So it just shows how fast things can change in football, right? So there's still a lot of time to go in the season, 5 games. So still a lot that can go right or go wrong. But I think, if you were to get top 5 and finish in the Champions League and win a trophy, then I would argue it's probably been Newcastle's best season in 70, 80 years, right? I don't think you could really
you would say it would be, wouldn't it? 100%.
Yeah.
Right.
You would absolutely snap your hand off for it at the start of the season. So yeah.
It'd be unbelievable.
Yeah.
So let's look ahead to Ipswich then. So Eddie Howe is back from pneumonia. I mean, obviously when it first happened, I mean, when you heard out he was in hospital, he had pneumonia. I mean, that is such a serious thing, isn't it? So one thing I want to make sure is that Howe feels like he's absolutely fine and he is ready to come back. I would hate to think that he's rushed back. I think obviously I think the way Tyndall dealt with the Man United game and Palace game was absolutely spot on. Do you think we missed him against Villa because Emery's maybe that step up tactically, and you did need Eddie there maybe on the sidelines, or would it probably not even made a difference? Maybe
I don't know how much of a difference it would have made, to be honest, Jack. I think there was a combination of different factors. I think tactically we probably weren't quite at it, but I just think, like I say, I think what we kind of discussed earlier, I think it was just kind of a build-up of a lot of games in a short period of time. It's obviously a big boost to have him back, and it's great to have him back. Like you say, perhaps he is, given the result, it might have given that kick to try and get back there and get his stamp back on things. And I imagine it's probably hard for him, right? Because you can, by all accounts, he absolutely lives, breathes, and sleeps football. And he thrives on being in that environment and being around the players and stuff like that. So it'll be a big boost to have him back. And hopefully, like you say, Jack, he can give us that edge. And one thing he's good at and seems to have been good at throughout his time here is that calm demeanour that he seems to be able to give off. And I imagine that probably has an impact on the players as well. In terms of the mentality you saw in the cup final, we weren't there with the occasion of, it's a day out, like we probably were the last time we were there to win. And I think he'll be there and he'll have the players focused and then pushing towards the Champions League.
Yeah, Bo, do you echo those thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I think Ryan's spot on that. It'll be good to have him back. I'm looking forward to it. I love Tyndall, love Mad Dog, but it'll be good to have. Exactly. But it'll be good to have Eddie back.
No, class. So let's have a look at the Ipswich game then. So, look, I mean, Newcastle are the massive favourites. What we think of a team? Do you think it'll just be the exact same team as Aston Villa, or is Gordon potentially going to get in for Murphy or Barnes?
I am curious to see what you all think. I do think against a team like Ipswich, I want to say this, and I'm not sure. I don't think it's going to happen, but hell, maybe Murphy gets a bit of a rest, and Gordon comes in from the start. But then at the same time, when you think about it, we know that Harvey Barnes on the right isn't effective at all. So it's one of those things where, do you take Anthony Gordon out of his natural position to put him on the right and put Harvey on the left because that's where he's most effective, and let them run riot, or do you stick with what you've been having? Because we all know it wouldn't be fair to Barnes to drop him for Gordon. But at the same time, you do want Gordon to have at least some type of run in to give him some type of game time. So I'll be curious to see what exactly is going to happen. And then at the back, We know Shar felt his hamstring a little bit at the end of the
we'll
game.
have to see. We'll have to tell them, won't we? Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know if that's just a precautionary thing or if it's something that.
There's rumours that Botman could actually make the squad on the weekend.
I saw that. Yeah.
I mean,
he wouldn't be starting though. I mean, this is the bloke who's played like 3 games this season.
No, but it'd be nice to have him back.
It would be.
I mean, I don't think we'll change the team. I don't really think you can. There isn't really the options. I mean, Gordon, you could argue, but I mean, he's looked off it when he's came on anyway, hasn't he? I think he's had a period now of probably it was when was it the end of February, start of March, he got sent off. So, I mean, he hasn't really played a game of football, a full 90 minutes of football now in 2 months, and you can kind of tell his match shotness not quite there. And I mean, Barnes and Murphy are playing as well as any winger in the league right now. So I wouldn't change it. I think it's too important a game to start experimenting with things. And like you said, I don't think any of those guys really work on the right anyway. They're not as effective. They're both left-sided players. So.
No, yeah. Totally. That's the problem, isn't it, with Barnes and Gordon? It's as simple as that. They're both better on the left. But I think if Harvey Barnes were to be dropped, that would be unbelievably harsh. Because even last week he got an assist for our goal. So even when Newcastle don't do well, even when he's not doing stuff, he always delivers something in the final third, and that's why he's worth starting. I think every game, especially at the moment, he's played so well. So let's look at score predictions then. Ryan, what you go for?
Well, I was going to ask you what you think of the team first of all. Actually, do you think there'll be any changes?
Yeah. So I think it's the same team. Obviously, we'll see what happens with Cher, but ultimately, if he's fit, then it's just got to be the same team. Like, you can't. There's not enough options on the bench to change anything necessarily. Gordon's the only one who you could consider, but I think Murphy and Barnes are both playing the best football they've played since they've come to Newcastle. So it's got to be the same team. So yeah, score prediction then, Ryan.
Look, I think I'll go for a win because I think we've got to win. There's no other option. Really, I mean, to be fair, Ipswich, they've got now to lose. They have been all right, like you say. I mean, they went to Chelsea a couple of weeks ago, played well. There was a couple of players in there, but I mean, on the whole, I would like to think, even with Eddie coming back, I think that'll give the crowd of players a boost. I'd like to think we'll be bang at it from the start. To be honest, I'll go 3-1 Newcastle. I think. Yeah. I think it'll be I would hope it'll be a relatively comfortable win. Famous last words, of course, when you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, famous last words. Bo.
Yeah, I think we do win. I'm gonna say 3-0. I'm gonna say 3-0. It's one of those things where our starting 11 is probably more talented than their whole squad, whether it's starting 11 or bench. Apart from the lap. I can't see us losing this. I think it would be a monumental loss if we did or drop any type of points. So I'm going to go 3-0. I'm getting a little nervous, but I think we win 3-0.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to go 3-1. I think Liam Delap will score for them, getting a taste of St James's Park before he joins permanently in the summer. And I think Barnes will score for Newcastle. So that's it from us this evening on the NUFC 360 podcast. We're all expecting a win against Ipswich. I'm sure you are as well. If you like the video, please like and subscribe, and we will see you next week after Newcastle lose to Ipswich. See you later.